What's going on? I hope you're excited to join us here for a new series on Kingdom Lyceum. Maybe you found us from the Dead Due to the Day series. Maybe you searched for U.S. history. I don't know how you got here. What matters is that you're here and you're ready to study U.S. history with us here at Kingdom Lyceum. What you're going to find here in this series is a bunch of lessons in order from the beginning of U.S. history all the way up until modern times, and they're designed for the Christian school or homeschool classroom, and we hope that they are of a benefit to you, whether you be actually using them to teach your class or maybe using them to supplement the material that you already know as a great teacher. So what we need for you to do is sit back, relax. Actually, don't sit back and relax. First, we need you to like and subscribe and turn on notifications. And then you can sit back and relax and enjoy U.S. history with Mr. Peterson here on Kingdom Lyceum. All right, well, let's go ahead and just get right into it. And the first thing that we pretty much need to cover before we start anything else, before we memorize any dates, before we look at any events, before we talk about any important people, is we need to talk about why you're here. That's right, why are you here watching this video? Now, maybe you're saying, well, it's because my teacher told me to, or maybe you're saying it's because you have a love for U.S. history and you have a love for all the cool things that have happened in our great nation. All right, cue the eagle sound flying through the background. All right, in our great nation's history. Whether it's either one of those reasons, hopefully you can enjoy this class in this series. And like I said, before we talk about anything else, we're going to get into the first key foundational question. And that question is this: why study American history? Like, for real, why study it? Like, what's the point of it? Especially in today's day and age, because I mean, we're learning a lot about lots of historical characters that we probably kind of already knew, but it's being brought to light, and it's messy and it's ugly and it doesn't look too good for those characters and for our history. Like, if these are the people who started our country, then, or if these are the people who have had key influences in our country, then is America even the great nation that we thought it was? And what I would like to submit to you is 3 reasons for why we study American history. The first reason to study American history, and really like the first reason to study any type of history, all right, is this: to teach us lessons about life. That's right, you can learn a lot about the life that you are living, all right? The life that you are in right now. You can learn a lot about that by studying American history, by studying any history. Because there are things in history that serve as reminders, they serve as lessons, they serve as almost like blueprints from time to time that we here in the current time can understand. And we can look at that and say, all right, that's what happened last time this happened. Here's how we can avoid that. Maybe you've heard the phrase, those who fail to study history are doomed to repeat it. Now, while I don't really like that phrase, I think it's kind of reductionist, right? That's a big word, right, that we can talk about later. I think it's a reductionist reason for why to study history. There is truth to it. Hitler would have done well to study history. If he did, he probably wouldn't have tried to invade Russia during the winter. Cut to Napoleon dropping his head in sadness. Yeah, that's right, because whenever you invade Russia in the winter without modern technology and warm uniforms, like you're gonna fail. And that's what happened to the Nazis during World War II. But it's not just like, okay, this event is similar in the past to what we're doing here in the future, therefore we can like look at this and decide how to do this. It's not just that. All right, sometimes you can look at like key character traits that made one individual successful or one group of people successful. And when you look at those key character traits, you realize I can take that into my life and I can go forward. And in the history of our great nation, we have tons of characters that while they were flawed, sinful people like the Bible teaches us, there's still a lot of things that we can learn from them, both for the positive and then also for the negative. So that's the first reason why we should study American history, is to teach us lessons about life. Reason number 2 that we should study American history, it's this: we should study American history to show us that God is at work. Now, I'm not one of those people that's going to sit here and tell you that America is God's anointed nation and, you know, it's like the second coming of the nation of Israel. Like, it's not, okay? You can think that, and that's cool and all, but it's not. However, the study of American history can show us that God is at work, and really the study of any history can show us that God is at work. That's a key point. It's hard to get lost in the moment. It's hard to look around. I'm not just talking about today. I'm talking about any time. And it's hard to look around and say, man, what is going on here in the world? What is going on in our country? Do we have any hope? Do we have any hope for the future? And the answer is yes, we always have hope. Now, as Christians, we have a lot more hope, all right? The blessed hope that is our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. But as Americans, all right, we have hope too, all right? And the reason for that is simply this: God is at work. And you can look back in American history, you can look back in world history, and you can see that God is at work in history. The third reason that we should study American history, for those of you taking notes, you should be taking notes. I hope you're taking notes. You're gonna need these notes in a little while. The third reason to study American history is simply this: to give us a sense of who we are. I mean, quite frankly, part of being American is understanding and knowing a little bit about your history and knowing what makes America, America. Like, we need to know, all right, who we are. We need to have a sense of who we are. There's some things that we're gonna look at here in a second that talk about like what an American is. Those aren't the only things, okay? There's tons of other things that make an American an American. What we think an American looks like, what we think an American thing looks like, might be it. There's other things that we need to like bring into our understanding of what an American is. All right, and the reason why we study to give us a sense of who we are is so that we can be patriotic. Not nationalistic, okay? America is not the most important thing in any of our lives. America is not the thing that we should identify by. Like, it's just simply not that. However, we need to be patriotic. We need to love our country. We need to love the processes that our founding fathers have put into place that govern American actions. And we need to work and fight and vote to protect those things, because that's what makes America America. And that's an important part of having a sense of who you are as an American. So those are the three reasons. Hopefully you got them down. The first one, to teach us lessons about life. The second one, to show us that God is at work. And the third one is so that we can have a sense of who we are. You don't know that unless you know the stories of the founding, the stories of the struggles, the stories of the ugliness of American history. Once you know that, then you're on a good track to becoming a student of this great nation. All right, so we got the three reasons why you should study American history. Now you may be asking, Mr. Peterson, what's an American? Maybe this is, I don't know, maybe this is you. If not, I'm gonna tell you anyway. So what's an American? Well, being an American is many different things, and it's many different things to many different people. Understand that like your experience as an American, like your experience, your personal life from birth to today is not the same as the person sitting next to you. Well, maybe it is because you're in the same house, so it's kind of similar. But when you're in class at school, your experience is not the same as that person. Okay, so if your experience is not the same, what is an American? A few different things that we can all kind of come together around and bond around and identify as American, okay? And so we're gonna give you 4 things here today. And you could almost call them the core values of our country. Now, this isn't necessarily written like explicitly in some document over in the archives in Washington, D.C. This is just simply what we're gonna identify as American values here in this class and in this series. First one is this: freedom. That's right, freedom. Part of being an American is being free. Part of what made America the country that it is today was people leaving the countries that they were in, all right, leaving those countries and coming to America for freedom. Now, before you like go crazy on me here, understand this: that's not how everyone got to America. In fact, to some people, the beginning of their experience in America was the opposite of freedom. That's something we're definitely going to go into, and we're going to acknowledge that here at the get-go. One of the core American values is freedom, and that's something that we need to fight to protect. We have a freedom of speech. We have a freedom of a religion. We have a freedom to assemble. All right, we have all these different things built into our Constitution, right, that make America really America, because as messed up as our country can be sometimes, we do need to remember too that we are one of the freest nations in the world, and that's something to be excited about, to be proud about, and to want to preserve. Core value number 2 that we're going to talk about here in our study of what is an American, all right, is this: individualism. Part of what makes an American is this belief in individualism. Some history textbooks and some history professors refer to this by the term rugged individualism, like I'm gonna pull myself up by my bootstraps and work overtime and invest my money in. And that definitely exists. You can see that in American history. Lots of people that became successful simply by hard work. We'll look at some of those people as we go throughout this class in this series. Individualism, however, is a core value to America. And sometimes it can be our downfall. If you're watching this in 2023 or 2024 or 2030, if YouTube is still around. At the time of filming this, we were going through the coronavirus pandemic. And part of what makes it hard for Americans to get this thing under control is our individualism. It's in our mindset, it's in our DNA, it's in how we were brought up to look out for ourselves and be responsible for ourselves. So there's a negative and a positive to this individualism, but it's there. It's an important part of what it means to be in America. All right, so we got number 1 was freedom. Number 2, individualism. Now we're gonna look at number 3. Number 3. Now we're gonna look at number 3. Hey, okay. Number 3, all right, and that is equality. Now, when I say that, I understand that there are certain groups of people that do not feel like they are treated equally. And that is definitely the case throughout American history. We're not going to gloss over that in this class and in this series. We're not going to shy away from that fact because we believe that that is sinful. We believe that it is anti-biblical and anti-Christian for anyone to be treated unequally. But it does not change, all right, the fact that the founding language of our country is one that's based in equality. Now, the equality that those people who wrote it had in mind when they wrote it is different than equality as we understand it today. America is a country that values equality. We want people to have the equal opportunities for success. Maybe not the equal amount of things or the equal amount of things provided for them, but equal opportunities for success. That's part of what makes America, America. Fourth core value is this: growth. Probably weren't expecting that, were you? And you say, well, what does that even mean? Look at the history of our country. I mean, it's pretty much like we landed on a shore and then we just went until we ran into ocean again on the other side. And yeah, there's a lot that goes into that. It's not just talking about national growth. America is focused on just like growth in every area. Americans want to see growth. And that's not a bad thing, right? It spurs, it's part of, it's in our DNA, go towards progress, and that's good. But we need to make sure that it doesn't come at the expense of other people. And unfortunately, in the history of America, just like in the history of many other nations, the growth has come at the expense of other people. That's one negative aspect of our desire for growth. Sometimes our desire for growth and our individualism cause us to treat people unequally. There's positives and there's negatives to all of these core American values because of our sin nature that is in us as humans. And as a result of the fall, and that's something that's just not going to be fixed until the Lord returns. However, as students of American history, we can take these things that we learned today and use it as a filter. Right? If you ever wore like sunglasses, that's a filter. It causes you to see the world around you in a shaded, protected way. All right, we're going to take these things that we learned today in this first lecture, all right, and we're going to throw it at everything we look at in American history. So we're going to unearth some good and some greatness. We are also going to unearth some really ugly stuff. Okay, it's in our history. We have to study it. All right, we have to understand it. We have to see that God is at work in those things. Hopefully you can learn a little bit here about it, and I look forward to lecture number 2. All right, so that's it. Lecture number 1 here in American History on Kingdom Lyceum. I've been your host, Mr. Peterson, Jeff Peterson. We'll call myself Mr. Peterson for this one because it's a classroom. We want you to go ahead and hit the like, the subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't miss a thing whenever we post a new lesson, which will be pretty often, I hope. If not, I'm probably getting in trouble with my bosses. Maybe you're at home educating right now. This is going to be a great tool for you. I would encourage you to check it out. And until next time, I hope that you are always learning.